Hello, everybody. Welcome back to some Victor gameplay, not gameplay, some Victor deck guides. Over the past weekend, I was at the NRG Milwaukee Showdown, and I ended up playing Victor. I tried out a lot of different decks. I thought about playing Rengar at first, but then literally the day after I decided to play Rengar, I found out that Prismaticus was playing it. And I didn't realize he'd be at Barcelona during the same weekend, but I didn't play Rengar. I thought about playing Rek'Sai, but I don't think she is actually that good. I know she had a lot of good results, but I knew that she was going to kind of falter as the meta develops and other people's decks start to get better, so I didn't really want to play her too much. I thought about playing Renata Glask as a fellow blue-yellow deck, but I was pretty sure that whatever Renata Glask deck I would cook up wouldn't be better than a combo Renata Glask deck, and I was not going to play combo Renata Glask. And I tried playing LeBlanc, but I decided that I don't like playing LeBlanc. So I ran out of options and I decided to stick with Victor because I thought about it and I was like, if I bring Victor, I think Victor's pretty good in the current meta. And I kind of thought that I would have like a 50-50 chance of making top cut. So I just decided to stick with Victor, see if I can make top cut and see how I do. So today's gonna be what we talk about. I'm gonna talk about the results. I'm gonna talk about the matches that I went through. I'm gonna go through like a very basic deck tech and some things that I want to I would change to my deck list. And after this, I'm also gonna go over the best of Victor from Barcelona, just to kind of see what they did a little differently from what I did. And throughout these, I'll also gonna have little snippets on my matches, some like memorable moments from the weekend from me. But let's get into it. So this is the deck list, just so that you guys know for a little bit of context before we go through all of the things. The most notable things is like I'm running one Shadow's Call, I'm running three Greybacks, I'm running two Shinjiaos, I'm running one Key Barrier, I'm running two Bellows in the main board, one in the side, I'm running two Salvages, two Temporal Breaches, three Pickpockets, a Vi, and a Watcher. Now, as I was driving up to Milwaukee, I was still finalizing the deck in my head, still thinking through everything. And I was like, I should probably run the Blue Decree just because it helps with the Mastery matchup and like the Rengar matchup and a few of these ones that could be a little bit trickier. And so I was gonna put it in the Blue Decree instead of like the Vi, and maybe instead of like I don't know. Instead of maybe like another temporal breach, instead of something. But I kind of wanted to have two blue decrees in my sideboard. But once I got there, I realized I literally don't have any blue decrees, and NRG only had one vendor at the event, and they didn't have any blue decrees. So I just made do with my Vi. So I would probably add some blue decrees here. And the other notable thing is that I'm running Treasure Hoard as my third battlefield. Rockfall Path and Forbidden Ways are pretty well established for Victor, but Treasure Hoard, the third one, is a little bit more up for debate, and I decided to run with Treasure Hoard just because it works well with pickpockets, and I want pickpockets for the Azirs and cannons. The result is out of the 710 people at the Milwaukee Showdown, which is 10 rounds of Swiss, which all happened in one day, by the way. 10 rounds of Swiss in one day is madness, but that's what NRG decided to do. I ended with a 7-2-1 finish, which gave me 41st place. And technically, I got the best of Victor. And I say lull because there were only two Victor players at the whole entire event, which makes sense. It's an Origins legend. Not a lot of people think Victor is actually that good. And so there was only me and one other person. Now, keep that in mind because my round one matchup was the Victor Mirror. It was me, one other person out of 710 people. In round one, I get the Victor Mirror. That's insane that happened. So crazy odds, but he was a kind of a newer player, so it was a very simple win, not very much to discuss there. Round two was my first loss, which you never want to see, but it was against Mastery. Mastery. But game one was if I remember correctly, game one was kind of almost a stomp. Um, I got my Imperial Decree Sabotage, but I just drew another one. Game two, I had a bit of a kind of like a. This was the board state. I had 3 units. This something like this was the board state. Ignore the top left for now. My opponent was at 5 points. I was at 6 points. It's my turn. In my hand, I had Imperial Decree, 2 Bellows Breath, and like a few other cards, but these were the only ones that are relevant. My camera is clipping off my Bellows Breath. But in my hand, I had Imperial Decree and 2 Bellows Breaths, and a few other not as relevant cards. And my opponent had like 4 cards or something, and he had at least 3 energy up. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky, or I think like 4 energy up maybe my opponent had, where I had enough energy to play. I had at least 7 energy, 7 runes. I could go for the win here, where I Imperial Decree, I trade with the Rengar, I conquer with the Recruit, I repeated Bellows Breath with 2 units, and I conquer with the other Recruit. But this play would lose to double Defy. So like it's a risk. I could wait another turn. I could tap Legend for another recruit, and I'm pretty sure I had a few units in hand, so I could just play them. Wait for a turn, since I'm at 6 points. My opponent can't win on the next turn. But if I wait an extra turn, I lose to Sabotage because I lose my Imperial Decree and I just can't win the game anymore. So I sat there for a little bit and I was thinking about it. And I decided to kind of go for the win right here because the odds that my opponent has 2 defies is lower than the odds that they have 1 sabotage. But so I went for the play. I Imperial Decreed. I traded with Rengar. I conquered with a recruit. I tried to Bellows Breath just the Pit Rookie. And then it got defied. And then I tried to repeat it Bellows Breath, the Pit Rookie, and the Mournful Witness to play around Mastery Signature Spell, but that also got defied, and that's why I lost the game. So that was a little bit unfortunate. Um, Maybe I should have waited another turn, because even though it's more likely that they have Sabotage instead of Defy, they passed this turn with like 4 energy up, and I feel like any Mastery player would have played Sabotage if they had one. And so I should just gamble on the fact that they don't have Sabotage, wait an additional turn so that I could play more units so that I don't need to rely on Bellows Breath. And the only play that this would really lose to is if they top dig a Sabotage, in which case I cry myself to sleep. So maybe that was a slight misplay. It's kind of like, do I want to play around this or play around that? Mathematically, what I did was correct, but if I take into account like the behavior that my opponent was doing, like what they are doing, then I think waiting an extra turn was correct because they probably don't have Sabotage. After that, I played against Diana. Diana is the matchup where I do feel like I always come out on top, but every single match against Diana is really stressful. We always have to be playing around the Moonfalls, we have to be playing around the Ride the Winds, and so it could be really tricky, but I typically manage to pull through. In this Diana game, I think my opponent game one just didn't really respect the Imperial Decree and Bellows because they just tapped out. And in game two, I kind of just had a very strong start where they were kind of forced into a position where they had to just hope I don't have removal. And so they tapped it again and I singularity and I won both games. Round 4 was then Akali. I almost got blown out by a Vilemaw here, like the unit, but luckily I had the Call of the Week to kind of kill it, and they didn't have any other units. So that was kind of lucky on my part, because I wasn't ready for the Vilemaw. Round 5, this was probably the best game all weekend. It was a really close match. Game 1, I think I won pretty handedly. Um, it was the Forbidden Waste game. So it's just Forbidden Waste is just so good with Bellows Breath and like um Imperial with Bellows Breath and things like that. Because what happened is he was holding with a Tide Turner with a Diana, but I could just repeat a Bellows Breath, kill the Tide Turner, and when I move a recruit in, the Diana will just die and I could conquer. So those are the kind of things that make uh, Forbidding Waste really good for Victor. Game 2, I got blown out by Angler Beast. Yeah, I got blown out by Angler Beast. And I hate this card, my least favorite card in the whole entire game, because it just gets rid of all of my board that I spent the entire game developing. Like if this card didn't exist against Diana, I just build a bunch of recruits and I just wait till later and I just play Imperial Decree and I double conquer to win. But this card makes the game so much more harder. So game 2, I got blown out by Angler Beast. I wasn't 100% playing around it because I wasn't really sure if Diana would be running Angler Beast. The other annoying thing is they're not playing Angler Beast because they're scared about Victor. Nobody cares about Victor. He's an Origins legend. They're playing Angler Beast because of Rek'Sai, and I'm just getting caught in the crossfire. That's just my little rant about Angler Beast. I'm not saying that the card should be banned or anything. Like it exists to give counterplay to these cards, so like it's fair. It's just annoying to have to deal with it. And even after he played Angler Beast, I kind of hung on for a few turns because I had ways to remove their units. But there were like 3 turns where my opponent just needed a Fizz or a Ride to win to just win, but he just never was drawing anything. And so that was pretty funny, but he got there at the end. Game 3, my opponent also found the Angler Beast again, but this time it came down a little bit later, and thank God I had Thousand Tail Watcher and the Sprite Fountain to double conquer and win the game. So really close games. That was the best game all weekend by far. Really had us both stressing. So that was peak Riftbound right here. The next is versus Irelia. Aurelia is still pretty straightforward for Victor. They have a few more tools, like the 1 energy spell that makes them untargetable, and also the tentacles, the purple up from the deep, I think. But it's still pretty favored, um, where you kind of just have a lot of kill threat against all their units, and then you could kind of just get points early, Imperial Decree, and double conquer at the end. There was one memorable moment from this game where this was the board state. He passed with 3 runes up, only one of them was green, with a ready Stellacorn Herder and a Rockfall Path. In my hand was Week and Temporal Breach. There were a few other cards, but not relevant to this current exercise. And no Irelia player is leaving a ready Stellacorn Herder at a battlefield unless their hand is filled with ways to protect it. I don't remember how many cards they had, but they had like at least 4. They had a Stellacorn Herder. They just drew 2 cards, I'm pretty sure. So they had like at least 4 cards. But they only had 1 green rune, so they could only play 1 Defy. And knowing this, in my head, I'm like, okay, he has to have a Defy, or else there's no way an Irelia player would just leave a Stellacorn Herder at a battlefield, especially when it's already ready. But I wanted to banish this Stellacorn Herder because she had a GA equipped, so I can't like easily kill her. So what I did here is I played the Cold of the Week first, and then like my opponent is thinking about it. It's like, do I care about my GA, or should I like try to keep the GA on the Silicon Herder? And they fell for my bait, in where they defied my Cold of the Week. And once they defied, they no longer have any green runes. I temporal breached the Rockfall Path to get rid of the Silicon Herder, even though she had a GA equipped, because she was at a Rockfall Path and she can't be played to the Rockfall Path. And so it's kind of plays like these where I think Victor has a lot of like outplay potential. And when you're playing against the green deck, there's a lot of times where you really want to bait their defies. Sometimes when I'm playing against the green deck and I have both a Hidden Blade and a Cold Weak in hand, if I get the feeling that they have a defy, if they only have 1 unit at a battlefield, I might Hidden Blade first to bait out their defy, and then play Cold Weak so that I can kill their unit without letting them draw 2. So it's a bit high risk, high reward because like, do they have to fight, do they not? But those are some kind of plays that you can consider when you're going for it. The round 7 was my second loss. It was against the Rengar. I should have won this game. Like the Mastery game, I don't think I could have won. After that whole talk about the round two, in the third game against Mastery, I just didn't draw any Vi's or any Imperial Decrees, so it was kind of cooked. Round seven, I think I have it right here. This was the board state. My opponent had at least 5 energy up, and if a Rengar passes with at least 5 energy up, their Rengar was still in the champ zone, so they can play it. I had a lot of energy. I had like 8 energy, and this is the board state. What I decided to do, it might not be exactly the board state. I had a few other cards besides Imperial Decree and Vi, but these are the ones that are relevant that I remember. But I push a recruit to Seat of Power. And this is kind of like a big question. Against high level players, and especially this late into the tournament, they know that like I know what I'm doing. Because at this point I was like 6-1 or something. They know that no competent player would just push a recruit into a battlefield when they have 5 energy up and a Rengar chosen champion still in their champion zone. And so he is probably worried that like I have a Vi, you know? Actually, I'm pretty sure I pushed in an honest broker because I calculated so that I would equal their might if they play Rengar because they have the Rengar legend ability as well. So I'm pretty sure I actually had an honest broker and I moved the honest broker to the Seat of Power. And so I passed my action with my honest broker at the Seat of Power, and the Rengar player thinks for a while because they know that I probably have some answer if Rengar hits the board. So he lets me conquer, probably because he's playing around Vi. And so I conquer. And then I'm looking at my 8 energy and wondering how I want to spend all of this. And whenever you're playing against a deck that can run Orange Rengar, if they have enough runes to play Orange Rengar, you need, if you're planning to use your legend ability, you have to do it as the first thing in your turn because they can react to it. I actually made a misplay against Mastery earlier that day because I tapped my legend towards the end and then they Rengar. So don't make that misplay. So I tapped my legend ability and then my opponent asked me, can he react to that? And I'm like, yes, he can react to that. And now he's thinking again. Vi is no longer like a threat here because, or actually, okay, I'm not 100% sure what his thought process here. But then when I tapped my legend, that's when he decided to ambush Rengar onto the Seat of Power, challenging my other unit here. And that's when I'm like, hook, line, and sinker. I play Imperial Decree, so whatever unit I had here trades with a Rengar. I had a recruit trade with Kaisa. I believe this was like a Pocket Cup or a Pike. I had another recruit trade with that, and I conquer here. So ordering is very important in how you do with it, especially when you're playing against Rengar and if they're passing with all this energy up. So just there was like this discussion on Twitter talking about like what is clean play and what is misplaying. I think like outplaying is just baiting your opponent to misplay. Because if both players are playing properly, then like there's no such thing as like outplaying if everybody's playing correctly. So when you play Viktor, you gotta bait your opponent to misplay in some ways. And like I think that's the closest thing you could get to outplaying somebody. Okay, so the other matches up. After that was a Draven. I kind of high rolled this Draven, I'm not gonna lie. I drew like all the singularities I needed. I drew the Call the Weeks at the right time. I mean, I kind of just high rolled this Draven. I don't think the Draven matchup is like too difficult. It's definitely not an easy matchup, but I would say we're slightly favored. Just play aggressive. This is another matchup where the Greyback is really good because you can conquer with a recruit and eat the Greyback to deny them a combat. But that was pretty simple. Ivern, I've always been like afraid of Ivern because like yes, it's a bad deck, but I've always thought of it as like a bad deck that might still beat Victor, just because once they have a bush and they start making all of these units, their units are just big, and our recruits can't really do anything. And if they also go wide, Imperial Decree doesn't really help. And even if we Imperial Decree Bellow's Breath, A, that could be countered. B, all of these birds have deflect, and I don't really want to be Bellow's Breathing them. So I always thought it might be like a nightmare matchup. But when I played against it, I kind of realized that they kind of suck at holding. Like I play Eclipse, I play Wages of Pain, I play Vi, and it kind of breaks a lot of their holds pretty well. So it turned out to be not that much of a big problem as I thought. I lost game 2 because I tried to go for a hold and I didn't play around Emperor's Divide, so that's on me. And round 10, I played against Jace. This was actually my first time playing the Victor versus Jace matchup because I've kind of been playing a few other decks in the past. So I wasn't 100% sure what to do. I probably could have won the first game. There was a game situation where I was able to kill the second and third Elder Drakes. The first one was already dead in the trash. And from an early Aurora trigger, I already saw 2 garbage grabbers being recycled. So I kind of gambled the game on the fact that he didn't have a way to recycle his 3 dead Elder Drakes. And so I just killed his 2 Elder Drakes at a battlefield by Singularity and quadruple Bellows Breathing. So it was like a gamble I went for. But then he played the 7 energy card that just predict 5 draw 2. And I'm pretty sure he drew into the garbage grabber. And so he recycled Elder Drake. It came back down. I didn't have a way to win after that because I de-ramped by 6 runes at that point. So I probably could have just played a little bit more patiently. All the Elder Dragons already hit the board. There wasn't like really much more that he could do. So I think I could have won the first game. The second game I won. The third game we went to time and we tied. But like we knew we were gonna go to time, so both of us were playing really weird. But I don't know. I'm kind of worried about the Jace Aurora matchup because Bellows Breath is just really annoying. But I would need a little bit more experience to actually see how that goes. Now, if you look at my match history, you can see that there are no cannons and no Azirs. And in my sideboard, you can clearly see I have 3 pickpockets for cannons and Azirs. So that was a little bit annoying. That these pickpockets were just rotting my sideboard for most of the day. And I've also never played the Victor versus Cannon matchup because I was playing other decks. And Cannon's honestly not that popular in my local meta. So I kind of wanted to get some like data on how it feels. The data says that Victor is favored in that matchup against Kennen. And if like if the general Victor population is like winning, I would say I would feel pretty confident in that matchup. The other thing is Victor was one of the few decks that could kind of go toe to toe against the Miracle Draven back in the day. And so if back in the day Victor can deal with Miracle Draven, Miracle Cannon is just weaker than Miracle Draven was. We got a few more tools, so I felt pretty confident that I would be able to deal with it. But I didn't get the matchup, and I still don't know how the matchup really plays around. But to kind of go into a brief deck tech, I plan to make another video where I actually go in depth into how to play Victor just for the Vendetta set. I'll probably do one of these per set. So I'm gonna make this one brief. That'll be probably the next video I put out. Most of these are standard cards. I put in 2 Bellows and 1 in the side, just cause it's not really great into most matchups. Initially, I had 3 in the main board because I was expecting more Rek'Sais. But as I thought about the meta and how it develops, I was pretty confident that Rek'Sai was gonna flop. And it kind of did. It didn't do terribly, but it didn't. There was not that many Rek'Sais in the higher brackets, and so I was happy that I went with 2 in the main board, 1 in the side. I might just play 3 in the main board just because I like it with Forbidding Waste. It just feels so good against a lot of these like mid-range decks. But it's also like kind of bad into some other decks like green decks. It's kind of not great into Mastery. So maybe I'll stick with a 2-in-1. 3 Stupefies, 3 Dredgers, 3 Brokers. That's all common. You might notice that I am not playing Dragon Form. I don't know. I'm still gonna be testing it more. I don't hate the card, but it just feels slow. It feels a little bit awkward, and it feels very predictable, in my opinion. I prefer Eclipse by quite a bit. Eclipse is just able to do so much more things. Like, if my opponent is trying to challenge or rampage me, I can eclipse their unit to win the fight. If I damaged a unit with Wages of Pain and they buff it, I could send in Recruit, they buff it more. I could Eclipse as a response to, let's say, Punch first to kill it at reaction speed. If I'm playing against Mastery and I just need the -4, it just does the -4. So like at a baseline, it kind of does the same thing as Dragon Form. Its weakness is, yes, it doesn't have the flow, because when you play a Dragon Form with flow, it's like you drew another Dragon Form. But I would argue that Eclipse allows you to predict, which is like half of a draw. So I think I prefer Eclipse over Dragon Form just because it's more flexible. It's kind of less card draw, but it just has more outplay potential in my opinion. Because we're not running Dragon Forms though, and we're running Eclipse instead, so we kind of have less card draw. That's why I'm running one Shadows Call. It's just good in some matchups. It's especially good with the Grayback, since I could just Shadows Call a Recruit and then immediately Grayback it to kind of essentially be 2 energy, draw 2 cards. But it's like whatever. If I'm playing against another tempo deck or another aggressive deck, I'm cutting the Shadows Call because the game will typically end before I've run out of cards. If I'm playing against like another slower deck or another control deck, or like a match where I really need to find a specific card, then I might keep Shadows Call in. 3 Cuddleweeks, 3 Hidden Blades, standard things. I run 1 Key Barrier. It's an experimental card. I'm just trying it out. The main reason I put it in is just it's going to be a card that not a lot of people are expecting, because it's not, from what I've seen, it's not widely played right now. But as long as you're not playing against purple, if I have a Recruit at a battlefield and then I Key Barrier it, if they're not purple or yellow, they're just going to have to deal 8 damage to it somehow in order to kill that Recruit. And if they don't kill the Recruit, they can't hold, or they can't conquer unless they like charm or something. So they would either need to charm it, they would either need to play a kill spell on it on a Recruit, and especially at reactions at action speed, the only one would be like Hidden Blade. And if you're Hidden Blade in my Recruit, I'm perfectly happy with that. Its weakness is purple. If they gust the Recruit, that really hurts. If they Star-Cross, it's a little bit annoying, hurts a little less. So this was experimental. I think it's been pretty good. When I was playing against Draven, it forced the Draven opponents. They pushed in with the Ferris Forerunner against like a Recruit, or maybe it was like a Xinjiao. But essentially, they had to double Spinning Axe to get over it to kill my unit, which is really funny. And so I feel like Key Barrier is pretty decent and underexplored. I'm going to be experimenting with it more into the future, so I'll give you guys an update later down the line. 3 Sprout Fountains, just a really broken card. Eclipse, I talked about how I think there's a lot of outplay potential. Escape Grayback, it's a good card, don't get me wrong. I probably wouldn't run 3 of it. I would probably move this down to a 2 of. Just because it's really efficient in that we can use a Recruit that's probably going to die to just give it +2. But Viktor doesn't necessarily need medium-sized bodies. Like, we don't need that many of them because we have all of these other ways to conquer over medium-sized units or smaller-sized units, like Wages of Pain, Sprite Fountain, Xinjiao, things like that. So it's a good card, but it's filling a niche that Viktor doesn't necessarily need. And so I'll definitely won't have a 3 of. There are some matchups where it so I've been thinking about cutting at least one of them for a while, but there are some matchups where it's really good. Notably, like it's good against any deck that runs Orange Rengar, since if they don't have any units in base and we conquer with a Recruit, that allows them to Orange Rengar onto that battlefield with a Recruit on it, since there's a unit there. If I kill my own Recruit, they can't accelerate, quote unquote, the Orange Rengar, which I think is somewhat valuable. It's good against Draven, since we're denying them Conquers, like I discussed earlier. So there's a few matchups where it's like a little better than normal. But I think the being good against the Orange Rengar is really helpful against Mastery and Rengar decks. So I'll probably bump this down to a 2 of. Wages of Pain, I think it's a goated card. I don't foresee myself ever dropping this below a 3 of anytime soon. I ran 2 Xinjiaos just to kind of make space for the Grayback. Xinjiao is good against any other aggressive deck, but there are a lot of times where he feels kind of awkward. Xinjiao doesn't really feel great against Mastery because he's only trading with their 2 drops. And even if I do manage to like stupefy Xinjiao Conquer, there's just gonna be a Rengar jumping at Xinjiao the next turn, which doesn't feel that good. I have two Vi's. They're mainly here for the Mastery matchup. I think Vi and Imperial Decree are the main cards you're looking for in the Mastery matchup, along with Wages of Pain and Eclipse. I think Vi feels really good. I don't think I need this third one in the side, but maybe I do. Depends. And Vi is also like not sabotageable, which is really useful. And I run two singularities. I'm still holding on to my two singularity in the main board. I think it's great in game one, where your opponent is less likely to have the counter spells for it, like not so fast, like abandon if they're sideboarding it, unyielding spirit. So I like to have I like to have singularity in the main board. And if they're playing a deck that has access to a lot of counter spells, then I might swap it out. In my sideboard, I have the third Bellow's Breath for matchups where I want it. I have two salvages for Azir, Irelia, Aurora, maybe Beta Hook. I have the two Temporal Breaches for the game with the Rockfall Path. I have three Pickpockets for Azirs and Cannons and other decks that are running Seals. I have the third Vi. I have a Watcher, just to kind of break some hold decks. I think Watcher would be good into Cannon as well, since they're kind of trying to like hold with Razas. Like I said earlier, I'll probably put two blue decrees in the sideboard. Maybe take out the Vi, take out this third Greyback, put the Bellows Breath main, two blue decrees in the side, maybe something like that. Or actually, I kind of don't like Temporal Breach. Like, yes, the high roll on Rockfall Path is fantastic. But I think any competent player would not risk it. Yes, you could try to develop some game states where you force your opponent to put in a valuable unit at a Rockfall Path. But I think it requires you to essentially bet that your opponent is misplaying. And even if our deck list doesn't have Temporal Breach, it doesn't necessarily tell your opponent that we don't have Temporal Breach. So we could just like hide a Wages of Pain at a Rockfall Path, and it's terrifying for anybody to try to challenge that if they have like a medium to large size unit. I've been thinking all weekend about the dream of temporal breaching a Ferris Forerunner at a Rockfall Path. Nobody fell for it. Nobody dared put a Ferris Forerunner at a Rockfall Path at any point in the game. And so I feel like it's kind of bait, and it's only exploiting plays against like bad players. Like, don't get me wrong, sometimes you can force a good player to have no choice but to send the valuable unit to Rockfall Path, but I don't think the probability of that happening is worth wasting two sideboard slots to put in Temporal Breach. Like, I could just replace these two Temporal Breaches with Blue Decrees, and that will help me win the only matchups I lost against, which were Mastery and Rengar. And technically, I tied the Jays, but it won't be helpful there. But it might be helpful there. But it'll help in those matchups. Speaking of battlefields, what I have generally defaulted to is Forbidding Waste first game, Rockfall Path when going second, and Treasure Hoard when going first. I think Treasure Hoard going first is like the only one of those that really matters. Or actually, I shouldn't say that. Treasure Hoard going first because I want to play like a recruit, and then on turn 2, I want to conquer Treasure Hoard, make a gold, make a recruit, and then play another 2-drop for 4 energy. And that's a really solid play that you can do. And so that's the idea about playing Treasure Hoard. If you are going first on a Treasure Hoard game and you have one 2-drop in your hand, don't play the 2-drop turn 1. Play a recruit so that next turn you can make a gold, make a recruit, and play your 2-drop for 4 energy really cleanly. I don't play Rockfall Path going first. I think a lot of decks that are running the Rockfall Path Temporal Breach combo just play it going first. I have opted to play Rockfall Path going second, or at the very least not in my blind battlefield, just because I know that some of these decks that are running Ferris Forerunner, they aren't going to be running like 2 or 3 Ferris Forerunners in the main board. Most of them. Some of them might. But I do know that if they have Ferris Forerunners in the sideboard, they are siding them in for the Victor matchup. So I do not want to blind Rockfall Path. I wanted this to be one of my other 2 battlefields, so that I can have the Rockfall Path Temporal Breach combo in a game where my opponent is more likely to have more Ferris Forerunners. So that was the thought behind there. And that just left me with Forbidden Waste going first. It's honestly fine going first. I think Forbidden Waste is Victor's best battlefield. I've said this before. It's just so good with Bellows Breath. So I might just run 3 Bellows Breath for the Forbidden Waste game. But yeah, it's just kind of bad into Yi, which is my only gripe with it. So if I was to make changes, like I would probably just cut the Temporal Breach, put in the 2 Blue Decrees, cut a Greyback and put in, I don't know what I would put in. Maybe a second Key Barrier. I'll probably put in a second Key Barrier kind of just to test it more. I'm not saying 2 Key Barriers is correct. I just want to see Key Barrier more often in my testing games just to see how it feels. But yeah, and if I'm not running Temporal Breach, I'll probably just do Rockfall Path Blind. Although it doesn't really matter too much, if I'm being completely honest. Yeah. This is the best of list from Barcelona, and so I kind of just want to go through and make some comparisons between this deck and my deck. We're running the same 3 battlefields, which I was kind of surprised about because I wasn't sure how I felt about Treasure Hoard. It was like okay all weekend for me. It wasn't like fantastic, it wasn't spectacular, it wasn't terrible. It was like okay. But they're running the same 2-drops. They're running 2 Pickpockets main and 1 in the sideboard, so I'm assuming they're playing Treasure Hoard as their blind. If you definitely are in a meta where Kennen is that dominant, that's definitely a good idea to go for. Because even if your opponent aren't playing any gears that you can pickpocket, they might make a gold and you can pickpocket that, which is pretty good value. They're playing 3 Xinjiaos. They're playing 2 Vi's. So they're not playing the Greyback. I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, that like Victor doesn't really feel like we necessarily need a mid-sized unit a lot of the time. So I still thought like Greyback was like a decent deal, so I played some of them. Dark Hunger decided not to play any of them. So that's an interesting choice. 3 Sprite Fountains, of course. They're also running 2 Bellows main, 1 in the side. I like that. 3 Stupefies, 3 Call the Weeks, 3 Hidden Blaze, 1 Salvage in the main board. At an RQ, I kind of see it. I don't like running 1 Salvage in the main board in Victor just because we have no card filter. We don't really have we don't have a lot of card draw or card filter, so sometimes it could kind of be a bit bricky. But I guess worst case scenario, if you're also running a Treasure Hoard game 1, you could salvage a gold. That's something you could do worst case scenario, which makes it a little less awful. But I probably wouldn't run salvage in the main board personally. But it is good at sniping all the Azir, sniping all the Aurora decks, sniping all the Last Rites in the Kennen deck. So I see the vision. It's just like a meta call, right? They are running 2 Dragon Forms. I don't hate it. I don't hate Dragon Form. I just kind of didn't like how it feels. They ran 2 Dragon Forms, 1 Eclipse. As long as they have some number of Eclipses in there, I'm happy with it. I just love Eclipse. 3 Wages of Pain, 3 Imperial Decree, and they're also running 2 Singularities, which is cool. Yeah, similar to what I did. Bellows Breath. They have 1 Bellows Breath. They have the 2 Decree of Insights, which I really wish I had in my deck list. I just didn't have them. It would have helped with the Mastery and Rengar matchup so much. They have a Decree of Unity. I kind of feel like I'm really meh about Decree of Unity. It's like a Hidden Blade where they don't draw cards, which is good, but it only targets purple units. And the only purple unit I'll be happy to play Decree of Unity into is like the Raza, which is 6 might. Besides that, like, I can't target Baron. Nocturne is a mid target. Vex has Deflect, so it kinda hurts. Maybe it's worth it. But off the top of my head, I can't think of any other purple unit that I'll be happy. Purple Cannon is a good target. That's a good target. It also targets base, but I'm kind of doubtful on the Decree of Unity for Victor. I think we have other more efficient ways to kill purple units. And if you're talking about like, yes, you can kill a Last Rites with it, Salvage does it but better. So I don't really like Decree of Unity. Forge of the Future for Kennen makes sense, or any deck that has flow cards. That's perfectly fine. I thought long and hard if I wanted to run Forge of the Future, but I just felt like I was already favored into the matchups where Forge of the Future would be good. Remember, I don't know how the canon matchup actually goes because I haven't played it yet, but the stats told me I was favored, so I was kind of just relying on that. One salvage is fine. The third pickpocket, fine. Two ashes. I also thought about playing ashes again, but I decided against it. It might be pretty good against. It's good against Lux. It's good against Jace. It's good against Kennen as well, where you could like banish a Raza indefinitely, and the Watcher is like also cool. But I like what they did here. I think this general idea is the same. They just scrapped the grayback for dragon form, which makes sense because these are two different ways to get 5 might bodies. And so I think that makes perfect sense. Maybe I'll also follow that. Like dragon form doesn't replace Eclipse, dragon form replaces the grayback. So that might be something else I want to try. But it looks good, and congratulations to them. They got 60, 69. Nice. That is unfortunate that they didn't make top 64 though. So pretty decent showing, a little bit unlucky, but GG's to them. And yeah, I think that is going to be an end of today's video. Like I said, the next video, I'm going to go a lot more in depth on how to play Victor. I probably said more than I should here, just because today this was supposed to be like the short version. But you guys, if you've been watching my videos, you guys know how it is. I talk a little bit too long about some of these things. But the next video, I'll go through how to play Victor. Um, I'll show my updated list on what I'll be running at the time, as well as like a few other cards that you can consider depending on your local meta, or just some cards that I think might be good. I'm just not completely sold on them yet, so it's cards that you could try yourselves. So be on the outlook for that. But besides that, I will see you guys next time, and good luck in your skirmish season and any other tournament you're going to.